Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Design Systems Community Berlin chapter. This is our very first virtual meetup, but we're feeling pretty good about it, and we're excited to have so many of you joining. So to get started, we have all of the ways to connect with the community. It's actually part of a larger community, and so this is the Berlin chapter, part of a larger community, so feel free to check out those links. So we have two really great talks tonight, Designing for Development from Patrycja and Communicating Design Systems from Viktoriia. So one thing that we're going to try differently with this virtual meetup is we'll use Slido to ask questions. And so we actually encourage you, rather than asking questions after each talk, we're going to wait until the very end of both talks to ask all of the questions, but you can ask them at any time and then we can upvote them. So the way that we can all join Slido is you can scan this QR code with the camera settings on your phone. And actually, if you go there right now, there is a question that we have to get the crowd warmed up. And so feel free to head there now and answer that first question. So a few housekeeping items before our first talk starts. We have a code of conduct within the design systems community where we want to really create a community that's respectful. So the code of conduct is that we respect others, keep it legal, play nice. We all uphold the conduct and our values, and we protect your privacy. And the design system community also has all of these values, and feel free to look over them. The one that we'll really dig into tonight is number 5 on collaborative working. So those talks that we'll have tonight cover that. So who are we? The people behind the design systems community in Berlin are Sarah, myself. We have Johannes as our VJ tonight, helping with all of the video transitions to run this YouTube Live. We have Joao, who many of you know. He's the MC that we've had at all of our past live events. And then last we have Ansi. All right, so the first question that we hinted about on Slido is that we'd like to have everybody go over to Slido now and answer that first question: what is your current role? So everybody head over there now, and you'll see that once you answer the question, word cloud is building, and we can see who our audience is tonight. All right, so a lot of us can probably see this. We have a lot of senior product designers, UI, UX designers, and then we have also, I think if we combined all of these, they would make an equal word cloud, but we have also UI engineers, front-end developers, iOS developers, and looks like the senior product designer is the biggest role in the audience. All right, so we're going to get into the first talk from Viktoriia. So I'll give an introduction. Viktoriia is a senior product designer at Github, and this talk is on communicating design systems. So from Viktoriia, we'll learn how you can communicate the decisions around the why and the how of design systems with both the team and then to stakeholders.
Should I take over now, Sarah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, everyone, we'll be back in a second as we work on our transition to the first speaker.
Hello, everyone. This is kind of awkward because I don't see my audience, I just see my screen, but hopefully that works out well. Today we're going to be talking about communicating design systems. This talk is informed by a series of interviews with different system designers where I was trying to uncover why, how communicating design systems is crucial to its success. So I've seen in my experience a lot of design systems fail. And although a lot of established companies talk about their system's success, many of them experience the very same difficulties you and I do. So if you're a struggling creator or a consumer of a design system, welcome to Design Systems. A little bit about myself. I'm a self-taught designer with focus on design systems, design infrastructure, mobile, and since recently dual screen devices. I also do illustration, and I'm a Blender beginner. Before GitHub, I took a very non-traditional scenic path to design. I studied finance, and I took some time to find myself while working part-time jobs in service industry. My first design job was in 2007, and it was mostly around graphic design. Back then, we didn't really have a product design framework. 12 years fast forward, I joined Microsoft To Do, and just recently I transitioned to GitHub, and I still have no idea what I'm doing. A little disclaimer, this talk won't tell you what to do. Many design systems aim to many design system talks aim to showcase a solution to their very specific problems. Sometimes these problems are not what your own design system can experience. So this is not going to be practical, and it's not going to be technical. And I'm hopeful that it's going to be inspirational. I want to kick it off with the quote by the Spotify Design Systems team. For a design system to work, it needs to embrace the company's characteristics and peculiarities. So what are these? These are design and tech stack, size and capacity of your team, maturity of your design system, number of design systems you maintain or source, and products' very specific needs and goals. All these factors directly shape your design system. And so this isn't going to be a showcase. It's not a practical solution to someone's specific problems. It's an attempt to take a critical look at the state of the design systems. Let's begin. Remember the time when our product development process looked like this? We had a user, and the user had a need, and a product would normally consider satisfying this need. And if it considers it's something worthy and valuable for the user, a product will file a feature request, it will go into a development backlog, a feature is going to be implemented, and the need is going to be satisfied. Sounds easy, right? This is how our process looks like now, right now. Or at least it's an abstraction of a process, so you might not adhere to the same rules. But it will look a lot like this if you have design systems. So when the feature goes into a backlog and design realizes that there is no pattern available for their needs, they will try to ask our design systems team for a pattern. So it goes into a design systems backlog. And then design has to make a case, audit design. We need to make it accessible, responsive, scalable to other features, compliant with UX heuristics, with product and brand guidelines, platform guidelines, then implement design pattern in all toolkits, in light and dark modes, and document it. And this is just a part of design. So then design will hand it off to engineering, and they will have to kind of mirror the same process. They have to implement it in all toolkits, all modes, make it accessible, make it responsive, compliant with dev guidelines, platform guidelines, etc., etc. And there's also kind of like design systems tooling team that could be wedged in between those that supports design, but also is sourced from engineering. And so the question is, has design gotten too complex? Form follows function. So design process is a reflection of our product needs. Our product needs are a reflection of our user needs. And over the years, our needs as consumers and product designers have gotten more complex. So here we are. I want to quote Mark on this. Please note that if you haven't done all 154 of these things, you failed at design systems. Actually, I'm not sure if I'm still sharing my screen. I will just quickly go onto this website and holler at me if you don't see my screen. So these are all the things that you have to make or consider when you're building a design system. So it's 94 different core components that you can consider implementing. But there is also like design language, design tokens, tooling, product management, all this bloody blah. So were in design systems supposed to fix the way we work? I think they were supposed to close the gap between design and development or engineering. But in fact, they actually create more processes, more communication silos, more communication overhead. And our design tooling is actually still optimized for illustration and graphic design. Does it mean that we should revisit a century-old debate? Should designers code? Okay, I'm having lots of fun. We keep building more tools to replicate development processes, right? Like version control, for example, with Abstract. We keep building plugins, automating parts of design, sourcing data from production to populate design mockups. But are we bridging design and engineering? Does this tooling satisfy our needs? If design is the source of truth, then why production is what our user sees and interacts with. And this isn't to say that design systems failed, but they do require a lot of organized work around them to be effective. Design systems is intended and was intended as an intergroup support structure. So it is a horizontal level to support feature work of your product teams, but it is also another team on your org structure that's kind of wedged in between engineering, design, and development and product. Components are easy, collaboration is hard. You can see how the lines of communication increases with the number of people. It's a pretty simple chart, but you can actually see how complex your communication becomes with just 55 lines and 11 people. And this is communication structures at Microsoft, where we had 144,000 people. I'm going to grab a little water. I can hear myself. Can someone mute them on the call, folks? Thank you. That's much better. So design systems teams are also very diverse. We have, so this is 2019 219 design systems survey by Sparkbox. And we have teams comprised of 49% of designers and UX professionals, 39% developers, 8% managers, and 4% others. And so within these, we have two very distinct roles. We have design system consumers, and we have design system creators. We also, this is another part of the same survey, and respondents were asked to select all that apply with two primary reasons for failure for their design systems. One is adoption, and the other one is maintenance. Our problems are closely tied to our roles. Let's take a look. Adoption means you're experiencing some difficulties as consumers of design system. And maintenance, it means that you have difficulties maintaining your design system as creators and people who support these living systems. I'm going to quote Stewart, the paradox of design systems. Everyone wants one, no one wants to adhere to one, and every design developer using one thinks they know better than the people building it. It's arrogance slowing down the professionalization of our discipline. We need to collectively grow up. Here's another piece of Twitter folklore. Please design system, no design constraints, only design system. Am I impersonating this dog good enough? I hope so. And this tweet actually inspired this entire talk. When I saw it, I thought, wow, that really hits the home base. The most honest takeaway I have from building systems is that there is no real magic here. Systems are just a reflection of your organization's ability to decide on a single answer across disparate groups. Components are easy, collaboration is hard. And you will see me talking a lot about this throughout the presentation. I actually talked to Garrett. Garrett is a systems designer at Slack, and we talked about what inspired this tweet, so I'm going to be touching on it next. So how do we arrive at a simple, single solution in conversations with creators and consumers? All leadership is about mobilizing, organizing, involving, and inspiring followers into collective action. This is from Crossing the Divide into Group Leadership in a World of Difference. And this book actually teaches you how to work in a kind of a multicultural, globalized environment we currently experience. And it took some inspiration from how to deal with our scaling teams from this book. So I'm crossing onto part 2, Crossing the Divide. And these are the things that I want to talk about that would help you try to find understanding and dilute the kind of roles in your team more. So first one, bring diverse groups together and find common ground, identify critical information and find effective communication channels, and level the playing field for creators and consumers. Let's start with this one, bring diverse groups together and find common ground. A case in point, when I used to work at Microsoft, we were basically like detached from the headquarters where a lot of the design work has been happening. And a part of this design work was focused around Microsoft Fluent Mobile. And this is, Microsoft Fluent is an open source cross-platform design system. And Fluent Mobile, very early on, has been a branch focused on mobile experiences. I think they are trying to kind of reduce, I've been talking to a designer from Fluent yesterday. They are trying to kind of reduce this differentiation so that they just call it Fluent language without any differentiation. But historically, Microsoft Fluent has been created for web. And so we haven't had very specific experiences for mobile, and we wanted to fix this. And the effort has been kind of rallying around creating these very consistent experiences for different products. And Microsoft is known for having lots of different products, including mobile products. And so where do you start when you have like a wide range number of products that kind of also can, target different audiences, and these audiences have different needs. And this is how the structure looked in the very beginning. It's kind of like was very strict, isolated, with a big divide between consumers and creators. I don't know if you've seen my mouse, but basically like everything here is creators and maintainers of the design system. And these product teams are design system consumers, but they couldn't really contribute to the system. And there was lots of intergroup tension as well. There was little interest and involvement into what's going on in both of these teams. There was a lack of direction and guidance, both from the design systems team and the product teams. A lack of transparency or empowerment to bring change, diverging opinions and product needs, and lack of support on the team level. I'm gonna grab my water. Okay, so what changes have to be made to kind of improve the situation? The team started building these so-called communication pillars. And my role was one of those from a product team, but also as I could also keep contributing and maintaining the system that was centralized somewhere else. The idea was to blur out the lines between the roles. So we kind of like intermingled different groups, identified leaders who were supposed to bring in different kinds of information into other groups, but also kind of involving them in contributing to design system. A lot of effort was focused on decentralizing and distributing power between these two groups, involving different teams to contribute while providing them with flexibility, ownership, and support, and enabling leadership on lower levels and fostering inclusion and belonging between different teams and roles. We also worked on something that's called, well, this is called work streams, but we also call them virtual teams. That was kind of before the pandemic, then when everything kind of became virtual. But if you're kind of scattered across the globe, you would have to find ways to collaborate in global teams. And the idea was to kind of create these, they're not necessarily triangles, but kind of like groups of people who are working on specific experiences or patterns, and are producing high quality work that aligns user experiences across different mobile apps. So for example, one of the examples is the dark mode V team. Another one, Fluent Icons V team. The third one is illustration coherence V team. And in these groups, we try to address intergroup tension. So like identify and bring your creators and consumers together, clarify their roles and responsibilities, create pillars of communication and ownership, create really clear decision-making processes and contribution processes, and ensure all parties have their necessary support to implement the suggested solutions. Instead of enforcing a strict system, Fluent identified shared patterns that make up, 80% of the coherent experience across the ecosystem. Striving to build these practical experiences we designed for familiarity, and we identified that familiarity is what our users appreciate most. So like what comprises these 80% of experience? In our case, it was like color, typography, grid, iconography, motion. So these teams could adhere to these, but not necessarily copy the entire experience of each other because their products might have different needs. Shared UI controls, navigation lists, people cards, commanding, and shared UX patterns, collaboration, search, inking, annotation, and more to be created. So how do we abstract design components from product features? I really love this term, bike shedding, which means when a committee spends time on things like materials for the staff bike shed while neglecting the design of a nuclear power plant. And I don't know, it sounds familiar, right? So like, I think we still spend a lot of time arguing about our own personal preferences, and sometimes our job is not about being creative with our solutions, but making it work. So focus on what makes a practical component. Make sure that you're designing for something that is accessible, responsive, compliant with UX heuristics, compliant with all the different language requirements, fastest usability tests, compliant with product and brand guidelines, scalable. And I think these kind of checkpoints will help you to really focus on what makes a good component instead of trying to discuss the shades of blue or gray or the way your corners are around it. On to part 2.2, identify critical information and find effective communication channels. Design systems is the act of moving an argument out of the code base and into a meeting room, says Robin. Here's another one. Our design system is a meeting. This is by Shannon, who's working at Braintree. I want to mention that when I talked to Garrett about his initial tweet, he mentioned that Slack had office hours where these diverse groups got together for, I don't know, 1 hour, 2 hours, and conversations sparked serendipitous answers and discussions. And this was a physical space where people could bring their concerns and questions and collaboratively solve them. If there was a person who could provide answers, it was really, really successful. So identify what's critical for your creators and consumers to know, when it's being communicated, where it's being communicated, and who's responsible for communicating it. Find effective communication channels. These could be office hours, design system, consumer support. That kind of sounds familiar, right? Like it can be customer support. And it's like, right, we are now having customer support for our design systems. Does it mean we have another product within our product? I don't know. I just kind of find it funny that we have these loops of like products within products. It's like a product inception. Community meetings, trainings, lightning talks, communication channels like Teams, Slack, where people could always ask their questions and share ideas. Documentation and change logs whenever your design system gets a change. Newsletters and current running work streams. And level the playing field for creators and consumers. So this is gonna be a little metaphysical here. Can a design system be intuitive? I think there was a lot of discussion in the design world where we're like, can an interface be intuitive? And a lot of people are like, yeah, interfaces are intuitive. But like, so first of all, what is a system? A system is a set of principles or procedures according to which something is done, or an organized scheme or method. So like a system is a way to bring order in chaos. And then intuitive is using or based on what one feels to be true, even without conscious reasoning, instinctive. So we might not like necessarily be born with understanding how to use interfaces. But users will feel that a design is intuitive when it's based on principles from other domains that are well known to them. And so I think the point that I'm trying to make here is like, whenever we're building a system, because it's a system, it's like you take this chaos and you try to provide some meaning, and you refine it and you define it and you detail it. And when you actually have this system, the people who are going to be using it, they might not know how you built it. So like, unless you're a sole creator and a consumer of your design system, there will always be a discrepancy between what it enables and what people know about it. And what can we do about it? Imagine 75% of your team members they don't exist yet. They're not hired yet. Like, how do we scale? How do we scale our team? How do we bring in your team members and make sure that they actually understand how and know how to use the system? So first of all, like, avoid the boss problem, decentralize knowledge, and try to kind of ingrain all of the bits and pieces of information onto the sources that are easily reachable and are accessible to your team members. Build systems with consumers in mind, and try to reduce complexity whenever possible. So these are a couple of ideas that you can use to do this. First, provide contribution guidance. So like, this is an Azure DevOps decision tree. Like, whenever you're trying to understand whether, like, who you are approaching, how can I implement this component? And it just provides you lots of clarity. Providing tooling instructions. So this is the one from GitHub's tooling instruction. This is how to use some of the internal templates in our design system. Give design cues. This is a really great one. I really love this one. So basically, this is a decision tree for deciding which component out of like 147 components you have, you can use. So like, you can answer questions like, do you want to use it in a paragraph? Yes. Is it supposed to be a main action? No. Use secondary text link. But then you can go into rabbit holes like, imagine how many components they have. Use a secondary button link. And then user test your design systems by asking the consumers of the system to perform simple tasks with it. So like, an example of it could be, you have a task and you have a system, and put together the prototype or put together an interface with the system. And then you observe it and you interview your users, and you kind of derive what's wrong and what could be improved and what's not very clear or intuitive. Consider video onboarding and tutorials for new system users to provide what kind of equal quality of onboarding whenever and wherever your new teammates are. So this is like from Brian Lovin, who's one of our product designers and system designers at GitHub, and he created a couple of videos on how to use this internal tooling that we have. Just keep in mind that whenever you're doing it, it means that you also have to update it whenever anything gets out of date. So it's also not a like 100% solution to our problems. And then, to keep your creators and consumers happy, you can measure the system's health levels. So like, check how happy your folks that are using and creating the system are. Track the number of contributors and the number of adopters. Watch for users who detaches components with Figma Analytics and interview them. This is a fun one if you haven't used Figma Analytics, but you can kind of dig deeper into different detailed views of who's using your components. Measure how much of feature work is sourced from the design system, and measure how much engineering replicates design. And to recap, so first of all, bring people together try to dilute these boundaries between groups and build an atmosphere of belonging and empowerment, whatever your role is. Distribute the power balance so that one group is not taking over the other, or that the other group doesn't feel intimidated by the design systems team, and avoid trivial discussion. Identify critical information, provide clarity on what, when, where, and who is supposed to be communicating important information, and level the playing field. Avoid the boss problem, build systems with consumers in mind, decentralize knowledge, and reduce the system's complexity. And I want to close with this great quote by Jules. I want to get a face tattoo that says, the hard part of design systems isn't designing reusable components. It's codifying, documenting, and sharing those solutions such that other humans are aware that they exist and trust that they are high quality. I want to just acknowledge all of the people who spent time talking to me. Victor, who I worked with and who helped me make my first contribution to Fluent, Damian, Maria, Garrett, Joey and Krista, Jules, Cristiano, Sean, and my amazing design team at Microsoft To Do. Thank you.
Yep. And before that break, I'd like to give a little bit of information about our next speaker. So next up, we have Patrycja, and she is a design system lead at Brainly, and we'll be talking about designing for development and building a design system. So this talk will cover the Brainly design, how the Brainly design system got started, how it gained global traction, as well as how to build a design case, build a case for a design system for a business. So we're going to take, let's say, a 5-minute break. So we'll meet back at, if you're in Berlin time, 6:47 p.m. And we'll take this 5-minute break, and then Patrycja will be up next. All right, we're going to get started with the next talk. And before we do, we just wanted to remind everybody to utilize our Slido questions. And so if you have any questions from the last talk and you'd like Viktoriia to go a bit deeper on some of the subjects, you can add a question now and it'll give people a chance to upvote your question. So just want to remind everyone. And we have Patrycja here. We're going to get started with the next talk. And a quick reminder, so it's designing for development, building a design system, and you'll get to hear about the background of the Brainly design system.
And I think it was very practical, Viktoriia, by the way. Okay, hi, my name is Patrycja Rozmus. I'm very happy to be here with you, the design system community. It's nice to speak to a crowd of like-minded people. I'm a design system lead at Brainly, the biggest online learning community in the world. We are still a relatively small company, but at the same time, we make product that is used by over 200 million of users in 35 countries. Which interestingly creates tensions in development. I will tell you how making a design system looked like in this environment. In this talk, I will tell you how we developed our design system and how we sold the idea to the business, about our design principles, about famous design that makes it work for us. I hope you will be able to use some of those insights in your organization. Let's get started. The story begins in 2015 when our developers made first commits to Brainly open source style guide. Unfortunately, it was one-sided and designers used their own UI kits, which after some time resulted in problems during implementation. Our designs contained elements that were older or newer than those in style guide. So after 2 years, our implementation process started to look a little like this. Does it look familiar? During the handoff, both parties had to make decisions if given elements should be changed on the designs or on the production. Developers were often unable to make the product look like it did on mockups, and it was tiring for both teams, or even for the stakeholders who didn't understand why the final product differs from the prototypes they accepted. So it was a problem. Seeing those problems, I made an inquiry about our team's work with the style guide. All members of design and front-end teams participated in the workshops, during which everyone could share their biggest problems and prioritize them. We ended up with a bunch of post-its, of course, that described our issues. And there it is, our biggest problems from post-its. The workshop confirmed that the biggest issue is lack of shared libraries and logical structure in them. We decided we have to address this and started working on a design system with the shared language between the teams as a priority. After some research about the design systems, I came up with this. You see, Brainly design system needs to focus not only on the product, but also on marketing. It's not so common, but in our case necessary, as we didn't have a marketing team. This kind of work is done by our community managers, and they are not designers. Strange, I know, but this is how we roll and still manage to get that growth. Imagine that. So to help non-designers design for Brainly, we need also libraries, guides, and templates for marketing initiatives. In details, it looked like this. We have brand in the heart of the design system with all elements you would find in more advanced brand book. The guidelines and patterns for product and marketing emerge from the brand. This is how our design system is actually built now, but before we did start, I needed to sell the idea of the design system to the business. And it wasn't easy, as some of you might know from your experience. This was typical reaction when I said those mysterious words, design system. Nobody knew what it was at that time. Today, it is much easier, I think, as design systems became an industry standard. But then they were not. One of the main selling points was the quality of the product and its consistent branding that now are more important than ever. In today's digital world of social media, users become brand ambassadors, if you will, through their feeds, for example, and they have more impact on brand's popularity. Advertising agencies are becoming more and more supplementary in the time of this digital and social revolution, you might say. This is the model that Brainly chose, as we don't use TV ads or outdoor advertisement, but rely on the product itself. So having design system was quite appealing to the business. The second selling point, and even more convincing, was the fact that without shared language between design and front-end, we were losing money because we were in design and technical debt, and it was increasing with every implementation. We not only produced unnecessary code, but it was slowing us down. We didn't get full business support then, but rather a cautious one with limited time for developing our shared language. Shared language, easy, right? Actually, it wasn't easy, nor trivial. We were super lucky to have a front-end genius on board, Konrad Zwinel, who now works at DuckDuckGo. He spent some time getting to know Sketch and found out that this tool has the open file format. So if Sketch files are JSONs, maybe JSONs could be Sketch files. Maybe I can translate HTML to Sketch. And he did it. Of course, he started small from a simple rectangle export, and it took us weeks to make a complete usable tool. HTML SketchUp is giving the teams a chance to export the entire style guide to the Sketch library. Colors, text style, symbols, all with proper naming, so that both teams can not only start building from the same components, but also call them the same way. We weren't able to take full advantage of HTML SketchUp back then because we didn't have the capacity to make a full export. There was no design system team back then. But as it was open source tool from day one, other companies were. It was a little frustrating, but also amazing because, to our surprise, the tool had some media coverage. For example, by Smashing Magazine, Protopie, which put Brainly on the merging of design and development timeline alongside Airbnb, Webflow, and Google. Right, shocking. We were stunned to see that HTML SketchUp was used by companies like Seek, Yelp, and drumroll, Microsoft, which was quite shocking considering that our tool was made by a team of 3 people, or actually 1 person, because Konrad did most of the breakthrough work. Let's go back to the design domain for a minute. At the beginning of the work on our design system, Brainly design principles were defined. The whole design team participated in workshops where we tackled areas that are the most important for us to achieve better quality of our product. And then I wrote down the principles with the pencil mnemonic in it. So the first letters of our principles form the name of our design system, pencil. Every principle has also a short description and a question you should ask yourself when thinking if the principle is fulfilled. Later, we made cards to help us work with them and give structured feedback at our design critic meetings, which, by the way, are named Sharpener. If the principle is fulfilled, we are putting the fill out side on the table. If the principle is not met, we put the empty side on the table. Obviously, working with those cards is kind of difficult during remote work. So one of our interaction designers, Maciek Nowak, created their online version, and it works like that. And recently, we even added custom emojis to our Slack to give design principles-based feedback daily. In the meantime, our developer, Patrycja Rozmus, who left us to work at Contentful, some of you might know her, who was also a co-creator of HTML SketchUp, finished working on the first complete export of our style guide. It became our basic design shared library used by all designers, and we could start refactoring elements of the system. This is a good moment to tell you a few words about our process. We created a circular process to keep those shared libraries up to date in the future. And this is how we roll. Here you can see our basic tooling. First, the designers make components in Sketch. Then we use Abstract for handoff and establish the final variants and the naming together with the developers. Then the code is made and sent to GitHub. Next, engineers export the newest version of the style guide with those new components as a sketch file. And the core team overrides the old sketch file with a new one on Google Drive. From that moment, all designers have an updated version of a library when they open their sketches. And this circle of life, how some of us call it, goes on forever. If you are interested how HTML SketchUp works, here is a little sneak peek. HTML SketchUp turns HTML into sketch files. So we need to create a page where we render components from the style guide or whatever you want to export. So the developers build the page with the selected components to be exported. In this example, this would be the page with the color masks and text styles. Then they start the Puppeteer that opens that page, and using HTML SketchUp, export those components to a sketch.json file. Then we import already exported files to Sketch using a Sketch to Sketch plugin. Its full name is almost Sketch to Sketch. And voila, color masks and text styles are now available in Sketch, and you can use it as a library. And the whole design team can use it as a library. This and other processes and the whole design system documentation are kept at our Confluence. Later, we migrated part of it to the public domain, but I will tell you more about it later. We had the export and the process, so we started audits and refactoring. First text styles, then layout, spacing, colors, buttons, input labels. Almost all elements had to be tested in A/B testing, so it took us quite a long time. For example, we tested new button system 4 times, I think, and it took us almost half of the year because we had to wait for free slots to make those tests because product teams, of course, have the priority here. On this slide, you can see our team grew. Brandy hired interaction and visual designers, and after that, we grew some more. Let me tell you how the structure of the teams changed over time. In the context of working with the design system, we divide members of teams into system contributors and its users, or consumers, you might say, as in Viktoriia presentation. From the design point of view, at first we had only one official contributor, and it was me, and a few product designers working in different product teams. From the beginning, the product teams were cross-functional. They had product designers, front-end and back-end engineers, analysts, and of course, product owner on board. By the way, this is just a scheme. Our product teams have a lot more people than 4. After we hired more designers to the design system team, or core team, if you will, we were not only making design system, but also supporting all product teams with the UI. At that time, we still had fewer interaction designers than product designers. And then we grew more, and new product teams were formed. At this point, interaction designers were transferred to product teams, but they were still main contributors to our shared libraries. You might say they still are communication pillars Vic was talking about, and they are working together like a V team at Microsoft, she mentioned, because they are working between each other and with the core team. In product teams, interaction designers work hand in hand with product designers in the model we are calling two in the box. In this model, designers work on the same features, but they are giving different perspectives and have different responsibilities. For example, Magda's job is to satisfy key needs of our users and to create solutions that will meet business goals. She also documents the development of our product. Maciek supports Magda by visualizing the ideas and adding delight with interactions and animations. He's also an advocate for design system in the product team. So he's making sure there are no custom solutions, and if necessary, he makes new components and documents it in our design system. Of course, they have to be tested first. So usually it's the first stage is this is the custom, but if tests are positive, we are adding it to the system. But the common goal of those pairs of designers is, of course, making the product people love. Coming back to design system story. We migrated hermetic documentation from Confluence to Zero Height with a sexy address designbrainly.com. And Brainly people love this. And then we gain an actual buy-in across the company. Why? Well, one source of design tool was finally accessible and easily accessible. All teams, not only product teams, could find their resources like styles, presentation templates, illustrations, etc. We also became visible by design and dev communities. All that gave our leadership confidence to invest in the area, and we finally get the budget to hire developers for the design system. And we also got the yearly impact award from the rest of Brainly employees. That kind of recognition for design domain was unusual and needed, and for design system, even more. On the slide, the beautiful design system crew celebrating this fact. And this is our secret design system sauce I was promising to reveal. The secret is dedicated people and treating the design system not just as an isolated, strict set of design rules and components, but as a thing that connects people, designers, developers, and everyone else. It's also good to have a lead who will keep the fire burning, but lead is nothing without the people. And solitary models of design system just don't work. With increased motivation, we continue work on shared libraries and atoms, and begin working on design libraries of bigger organisms and pages. Then COVID happened, and our plans had to change. We couldn't build our teams as fast as we would like to, and we focused on working with supporting developers from product teams. We started making the foundation for design system on mobile, with logic for stuff like dark mode, delivered by Dina Sabat, our interaction designer. But as Brainly has very smart people on board, even in those difficult times, our team was able to deliver something awesome while developing the product. One of our engineers, Bartosz Lorek, with the design support of Dawid Lewandowski, created the tool that gives designers full control over making lightweight, production-ready animated SVGs. So after HTML SketchUp, we had another tool by Brainly, SVG Animate. And like HTML SketchUp, it is open source and free to use for all. The tool was used to update our homepage with a juicy animation of Brainly community. On our Medium, you can find an article with details like this comparison of similar tools. This might be a game changer sorry, also for your team, as the animations are light and with better controls over your vectors. You can even use Puppet Work tool in the Illustrator and use it in your illustration. Animation, Jesus. With the new tool at our stable, we are planning to make a system for illustrations that can be easily animated to delight our users. And still, there is a lot of educating to do to connect all brainy people through design and to make quality that students, their parents, and teachers will love. Olga Wysopo, our visual designer, is design system main educator, and she makes videos for community managers, tutorials, and stuff. But the whole team is doing it as well. We are brainy. We love educating. And that's all from me. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Patrycja. That was great. Especially love to see the illustration components at the end. So for the group, we're going to take another 5-minute break before we come back to Q&A, which will hopefully give people time to add more questions to the Q&A. All right, we'll check back in 5 minutes. All right, we're back, and I'm happy to see we have a pretty active Q&A now. So remember that you can continue to upvote these questions. So we'll go ahead with the first question from Anonymous, which has been upvoted. how do you communicate and handle platform-specific limitations? Or is it preferred to avoid the conversation and allow each platform to handle itself? So I would invite either Viktoriia or Patrycja to take this.
I'm not sure what the meaning of platform is in this question. Can Anonymous specify this, and we can go to come back to the question later?
I can try answering this.
Okay, go ahead.
So like I think you're asking a question and you're already answering it, because you're saying communicate, and I think that's kind of like the answer to this question, is that you have to communicate with these different groups of people. So like the platform engineers, who I absolutely without no doubt think are the platform experts. So like our responsibility as designers is always to try to create as much clarity of what we need from engineers, and then from engineers to point out the things that could improve user experience. And then there's things like when we're talking about specific platform limitations, what are the recommendations from a platform to treat those things? Like you can take a look at Google Material Design, both at the design side of the design system and the kind of coded part of it. And the same with like HIG or Fluent. So I think the idea is to just kind of bring everyone again on the same level and try to clarify what specific limitations you're tackling, and then try to clarify how you can reduce either the friction or whatever you're working with. Hopefully that makes sense, because it's kind of weird that we can't clarify these questions.
All right, thanks. The next question. I'd like to know more from both speakers about testing components. How do you do it?
So maybe I can take it right now. So we switch. Okay, so how we do it? I already told like a sentence or two about it. Everything is tested at Brainly. So if we are introducing new component, and this is the idea that was born inside of the product team, it is tested like with the new feature or with the new changes on product. And if the test results are positive for the whole feature, we are implementing this new component. And when it comes to changes like cross-team changes, like we are changing, for example, those buttons I mentioned, and we changing the styles of buttons in the whole product, we had to test it on a crucial market, like the most important metrics has to be untouched. So we made few tests to make sure we are not spoiling anything. And I think it was like a 4 test, as I remember. And it took us a long time. As I said, it was like half of the year, because we had to wait for the free slots for those tests. And yeah, and when we are sure that the most important metrics are fine or even increasing, we are rolling out the change on the whole markets. I hope.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Vic. Go ahead. Add to it.
No, yeah, I think just to build on this, because I absolutely agree with what Patrycja said. I think you can look at components holistically and user test them in different features as well. So like if you're building a scalable component that would work in different contexts, you can bring those different features to user test and kind of track their success against those. And I mean, it's incredibly hard to, I think, test a design system because there is always this component of like, how do you separate a product or a successful feature from a component or a system? So I think there would be always difficulty about this, but there's always ways to like test it internally, user test it internally before the launch, but also like look at the data after it's being implemented.
Great, thank you. The next question, what are the core must-haves in a team while developing a design system? So this can include skills, specific professions, or characteristics. And I think it's also interesting to consider, you know, Patrycja, you mentioned you had a really small team to start. Yeah, thinking about those core characteristics of what's needed in a team.
Okay, so I will try to answer this. Starting from the titles or positions, we have in a core team, we have visual designers that are taking care of maintaining our libraries, and basically they are doing also everything else that needs to be designed in the company, but their core responsibilities are around maintaining our libraries. Interaction designers, as I said, work on product teams and creating new components and new patterns. So we have visuals, like less advanced, maybe you might say, designers that are not overqualified to the maintaining libraries, and we have more qualified designers that can do interaction inside of product teams and satisfy the needs of our users best. There's me. I'm a designer. I'm not a developer, and I'm a lead at Brainly. But we also waiting to hire a developer to our team. So we will have, I think I might say we are looking for someone. So if there is someone in the audience, we are looking for the developer that will help us to develop our design system and take it to the next level. We have also those developers that work on product teams and helping us at the same time. And when it comes to mindset, I would say that people working with design system should have some tolerance on those inconveniences that comes with design system, that sometimes we had to sacrifice some things. Not all ideas are like worth of working. And I think we have it, like we have this understanding about the balance and the pros and cons. So I think this is quite important. And when it comes to developers, the developers working with design system teams also should have some specific characteristics. I think they should have the mindset that that enables them or drives them to making the solutions that make the lives of people easier, like to simplify stuff. And they should look for ways to do that. I think in life generally. So this mindset is very important. And as for developers, we are looking also people that can build tools, because this is important part of our design system work. So we are looking for someone who will either develop HTML SketchUp further, or invent another tool, or help us with external tooling. So this is also important part of this role. And communication is also very important. And this is not because Vik was talking about this before, but yeah, people that work in design system should have good communication skills, for sure. Yeah, thanks. I will rest now.
From the top of my head, also to build on what Patrycja is talking about, I think what's incredibly important when you're working in a design systems team is design or kind of systems thinking and the ability to extract something from a chaos and make sense of it and kind of refine it. And as well as like practical thinking and making sure that things are accessible, they're responsive. So like, how do you scale components that look in a design so pretty, but like can break very easily when you're looking at them on different devices, looking at them as different people with different abilities. I think there's also a very interesting part of it is like this discourse around different groups and different roles, and discourse a lot around like us versus them, like programmers against designers, consumers against creators. And the idea is like we have all we have shared goals, hopefully, like we're trying to accomplish one thing. So it's very important how you work in a team. Like it's I think the most crucial when it comes to collaboration. So I don't know. I talked to Jules Forrest about it, and she was saying that there is an interesting idea that your design system, the way you work in design systems, or the way you work with design systems, has to be tracked and measured against like how you progress in your career. Like this has to be like implemented in your career path, because it actually is an identifier of how you work within a team. So yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, Vik, thanks. I completely forgot about the most crucial thing, systemic thinking and like seeing the patterns everywhere, like connecting dots. Yeah, we have something like this, we have something like this here, and building on it. Yeah.
Great. So this next question, I think it can kind of extend the conversation that we've just had from what we heard from both of you. So this is a question for both of you. If your design team was reduced to a really small team, what would your priorities be for the team? So I think the reason it's connected to the last question is because, we talked about what was really important to have in a team. And now we're talking about, let's reduce that team. Now, what are you going to prioritize? And so since we're prioritizing it, maybe just list like 2 or 3 top things.
I don't know, I can jump in. Or you go ahead.
I just wanted to say, like, in fact, we have quite a small team. So it's not that huge, but yeah, go on, Vik. Maybe I can add something later.
I don't know. I mean, I think it really depends on like what a small team means exactly. Like, is it a huge company? Is it a corporation that you're serving and you're like a one-person team? And I think this isn't going to be working. You have to be like, then I think your priorities would be like to establish, to get buy-in from stakeholders and establish this understanding that design systems are necessary and that the design systems team has to be scaled to a number of people who can support it full time. If you're just a small team in a relatively small company, I would focus on establishing the foundation for your design system if you don't have one, including the principles you work against. I think these are, this checklist that I was showcasing to you, I think would be a really good kind of baseline for this conversation. You can go and check off all 154 items from there. But yeah, you start from somewhere.
Okay, so I will try add to what Vic said. I think that if we would be reduced even more, so it would be like going back in time. So at the beginning, we had only product designers, and like I was supporting them with visuals and UI, and probably product designers will be the most important people to stay, and maybe they would be working like partially with the design system components, and we would still be focusing on this shared language, I think, as I showed you before. We have this shared language and not making new components, maybe like extendedly, just based on what we have, and probably shrinking the team would be connected to slowing down with the product development. Like that. But this is quite obvious. So yeah.
Great. Maybe I'll add something interesting to that question before we go to the next one. So at Contentful, we also had a pretty small team, and one of the priorities for that team was to be able to show the value of the design system in order to build a bigger team. So communicating the value and making it known on how it was impacting the business to have an open source design system became pretty important for our team. And the UI engineer role was huge. All right, the next question is, what is the biggest hurdle with engineers?
No one wants to talk, engineers will be offended or something. And I was like, no, working with developers is great. Like I don't have any problems with them. The only problem I can imagine, I can say there is, yeah, in fact, the communication problem, because we grow so fast that we have many new engineers on board. Last months, like increased the number of engineers, I think, I don't know, maybe twice. So I don't know that people. I will have to know them. So I'm thinking about how to onboard them. One of my goals for this quarter is to make onboarding for new engineers. They are working with design system on a daily basis because they are working with interaction designers, but they are not working with the design system team, you know? Like they know style guide, they use it, so there is no problem there, and we don't have a problem with the not true to mockups implementation like we had before, because before we did have when we didn't have shared language. So we do have that, but we have a problem with communication, I think. So yeah.
Thanks for this. I don't know, I feel like I'm kind of like a broken vinyl when I say, we need to start speaking the same language. And needs to stop having this discourse about like engineers versus designers, or phrasing questions like, what is your biggest hurdle with this group of people? That kind of like generalizing those people. And I think we can just start rephrasing those questions. We can actually start saying, what is the biggest hurdle working with these platforms, or what is the biggest hurdle designing these things? So instead of like focusing on like generalizing some group behavior, we can actually start using positive language. And one of the ways, like if we still try to answer some of these questions is like, we have different roles. I might not necessarily understand how development works. Developers might not necessarily understand how design works. So I think the biggest difficulty is like to start speaking the same language and switching, kind of reducing the cognitive load of switching different mental models when it comes to our communication. So like just keeping in mind that we're all different in some way, that the groups that we're working in are different. So like what can we do to keep that in mind and ensure that we're actually talking the language of the other person.
Cool, love that answer. So we have 3 more questions on the Slido. I think it would be great to answer them. So this first one is, what is your complete tool stack for the design system?
I already was talking about it, so maybe Vic can. Sorry, Vic, but I don't want to repeat myself. So maybe you don't want.
Sure.
You don't want to do it. I can do it. I can do it. I can show the slide even. Like no problem.
No, I think it's interesting. I can talk more about the stack for Fluent because I'm rather new at GitHub, and I'm also right now not a part of the design system team. I'm actually on the product team. But when I used to work at Microsoft to do, we started by having a combo of Sketch and Abstract. Because we appreciated the kind of the flexibility and ability to version control things. But eventually we switched to Figma just because we realized that if we're scaling and if we're growing, we see a lot of advantages in tools that make it easy to collaborate in. And so that was another hurdle of like, how do you actually transfer all of these different design systems from Sketch into Figma. But yeah, so like I think the team was pretty happy with what it eventually turned into, because we optimized for the successful design system is a fast design system, which is probably not true about most of the design systems. So like when you optimize for speed, it's almost impossible to maintain all of these different design systems across different tools. So I think you would have to make some decisions around there. Yeah, and in terms of like dev stack, we just had React components. I don't know, I hope that answers the question.
Great. And so actually, I do think this is the last question. And the question is, how do you evangelize the value of a design system? So Patrycja, you talked about that a bit in your talk of how to build a business case for growing a design system. So yeah, if either of you want to touch on that a little bit more.
Okay, so I will try to add what I was talking about. So to add to that, to what I was talking about. I think that good thing to do is to connect our goals as a design system with the goals of the company. Like to look for the opportunities that the companies have. Like for example, our CPO created a set of goals for the whole product, and one of the most important was being accessible and inclusive. So yeah, so I like hang on to this and making argument about how our team can contribute to that if we, for example, hire the developer. To make the product more accessible, or we are focusing on mobile. So okay, so let's do the design system for mobile and focus on that. And with, for example, new person to do that in the team. And this is the value for the whole company. Or recently, Google introduced this new metrics, ranks, that will measure UX experience of the pages. So this is also, I think, the point where design system can help, like to make the best practices for UX designers, product designers, and also developers, that will enable our product to be in Google results higher. So I would look for that opportunities. This is not all what I have said, but maybe your company have different ones. Yeah, hope that was helpful.
I think from my side, I don't know, you evangelize this kind of implies weird incentive structures. So the idea is like that you have a common ground and shared goals, and the team is supposed to run on trust. So you're not supposed to like spend a lot of time trying to involve everyone and like sell it to them, because the team is supposed to understand the value that the design system brings into this conversation. So like it's purview not only a design system team, but the entire org. And if the design systems is an intergroup support structure, maybe we can rephrase it in a way that like, what are you trying to accomplish that we can help you with? Instead of like enforcing something that people don't want to implement or don't understand. About finding the understanding of like, how can we help you? What value we can add to your work when it comes to supporting your product team?
Yeah, I was adding only from the perspective of like evangelizing to the people in power, but when it comes to evangelizing to the people that work with us, yeah, of course, we have to speak with them, do the research, like inquiries, surveys, and we are doing it. But I'm thinking how to make them more engaged. And yeah, that's quite hard, but we are trying. We are also doing the videos and templates. As I said, Olga Vysopol from our team done the workshop how you can become a better designer, how you can make better designs at Brainy if you're not a designer. And that was a workshop for community managers, and they had like all our design system that it's on designbrainy.com explained, and with the templates in Canva they can use. So it was like, yeah, and they were very happy, and this increased their speed of their work. And so, education.
Great. Thanks so much for those answers and all of the Q&A. So one of the last questions is actually a comment, and I think it's a great closing comment. So this isn't a question, but it's necessary to say that these were outstanding keynotes. Thanks so much to both of you. And there were 3 women doing this. This matters. And so thank you both. I completely agree. And also thanks for all of the question and answers. I think the unusual thing, we mentioned that this is our first virtual meetup, that we don't have the audience feedback. So we know that there were also some Google Hangout, people were leaving comments or on YouTube as well, and then within Slido. It was really helpful to get that audience feedback. So thanks so much to the audience. Thanks so much to our speakers. Those were outstanding keynotes, I agree. So thanks to Viktoriia and Patrycja. Big shout out to our VJ, Johannes, who helped put this whole presentation together and ensure that we stayed live. And we want to let you know that if you have any feedback, please add it directly on the meetup page, and we'll also send out a survey afterwards. So if our next meetup also needs to be virtual, we'd love to get the feedback from the audience on how we can improve. Great. Well, have a good evening, and thanks so much for joining.
Thank you, everyone.